thinking with one's feelings. The phrase seems clear, but it's hard to get. Thinking with shadows, with sadness, with anger. I'm thinking of thinking without regret. Has the angry sun arisen yet? The hungry lovers want to linger. The phrase seems clear, but hard to get. The morning light caught in my net, the fluke falling from my finger. I'm thinking of thinking without regret. God blesses the ground, the hidden street. God blesses the maze in the heart of the stranger. The phrase seems clear, but it's hard to get. When I was a child, I swam through the net, refusing with each breath to surrender. I'm thinking of thinking without regret. Perish the thought, make it forget. Feel your way in the dark through the danger. The phrase seems clear, but it's hard to get. I'm thinking of thinking without regret.
So, in honor of friends from graduate school days, I'm going to read a very early poem in this collection, Without Mythologies, that Robert and Elizabeth kindly published in 2008. And it's entitled Beauty and the Beast, and it has two epigraphs, one from Shelley, desires what it has not, the beautiful. That's from his poem The Sensitive Plant, and the line itself is from Plato's Symposium, which Shelley translated. And the second one is the Orphic explanation of the earth, which is the sole task of the poet, and that's from Mallarmé, Letter to Verlaine. And it's dedicated to my wife, Joyce. I'll leave it to you to judge which of us is beauty and which the beast. The poem is in 7 parts. He met her in the library, where all things have their history, but nothing living may endure, among the dogs of literature. In those lugubrious catacombs, shadowed by dark, portentous tomes, she seemed a vision of delight, when first she gleamed upon his sight. Or some such words to that effect, borrowed from some lost dialect, which happy poets used to know 100,000 years ago. But how she happened to be hurled down to that Stygian underworld in which he spent his days in vain, the beast could never ascertain. Unless, to invert the fable, she, playing Orpheus to his Eurydice, had braved the gloomy depths of night to bring him back into the light. 2. Beauty loved reality in all its ambiguity. She saw things as they really were, yet they were beautiful to her. She lived so fully in the flow of being that the here and now was always dear to her, and home was everywhere that she did roam. That latter-day propensity to anomie and ennui, that strange disease of alienation, had never marred her education. Poetically, she dwelt alone in self-sufficiency as one who hears within herself the song we strive to hear our whole lives long. 3. The beast detested the impure, chaotic world which we endure. He worshipped things celestial and thought all others bestial. He with his telescope trained high upon impossibility would ruminate on human folly, for he was prone to melancholy, and oftentimes with clouded face would stare abstracted into space, as if each solitary star could tell us who and what we are. 4. This occupational condition, derived from frustrated ambition and from the endemic narcissism of modern or postmodernism, was a disorder that he shared with many another would-be bard. According to a certain gloomy thesis that Professor Bloom had recently set forth, the poet is driven, though he doesn't know it, not by eleemosynary motives, on the contrary, but lust for power, or if you'd rather, disguised designs to do him father, which makes him truculent and bitchy, thus Bloom by way of Freud and Nietzsche. Some diagnose this diagnosis as symptom of the same neurosis, and some more pessimistic said that all the poets now were dead. Blizzards of prose and epidemics of deconstructionist polemics had turned them all to academics. 5. Here a hiatus intervenes. Beauty is lost, and by no means will she be called upon to give her presence to his narrative. Why should she languish as a slave in some benighted poet's cave, or for an egoistic male in Hades as a shadow dwell? Let him be chained to his own haunts. Apparently, that's what he wants. Let him be wretched and forlorn, by his internal furies torn. We'll bring this fragment of his woes, the one concluded, to a close. With that, she rises up in flight, unmanifested, lost to sight, impalpable as wind. 6. Not quite. 7. Calling these verses back to mind, years after they had been consigned to an old notebook on a shelf, detritus of an abandoned self, musing upon the waste of years, his eyes filled up with bitter tears. Was it the first time he looked back in terror that he lost the track, not even seeing she was gone? How could he wander for so long in error and have been so wrong? But if the goal of his pursuit had been for a lost absolute, maybe she'd never really been gone, but had merely gone unseen. Maybe through all his wasted youth, searching for beauty, he'd found truth. Maybe that mania to transcend was ended, and his tale could end.